The massive ship hung in space like a dark metal mountain. Its name was the Void Reaper, and it was the most feared vessel in the galaxy. The ship stretched over 2 miles long, covered in thick armor and bristling with weapons that could crack planets in half. Inside its cold metal halls, Captain Vex studied the glowing screen before him. "Target confirmed," said his first officer, Grim. The alien's 4 arms moved across the control panel with practiced ease. "Third planet from the star. They call it Earth." Vex nodded slowly. His red eyes glowed in the dim light of the command bridge. Like all members of his species, he had been born on a world where only the strongest survived. His gray skin bore the scars of 100 battles. "What do we know about these humans?" "Weak," Grim replied with a harsh laugh. "Our scouts say they fight each other more than they fight outsiders. They have no unified defense force. No real weapons that could threaten us." Around the bridge, other crew members listened with interest. They came from different worlds, but all were part of the Deathworld Alliance. There was Hawk, whose people lived on a planet of endless storms. His blue skin was thick enough to stop most bullets. Next to him stood Nora, from a world where gravity was 3 times normal. Her muscles bulged under her uniform. At the weapon station sat Tor, whose species had evolved from pack hunters. His sharp teeth gleamed when he smiled. All of them had one thing in common. They came from worlds that tried to kill them every day, worlds with poisonous air, deadly animals, or crushing gravity. These harsh homes had made them strong. They had formed the Deathworld Alliance to conquer the soft worlds of the galaxy, worlds where life was easy and people were weak. "How many ships do they have?" Vex asked. "Perhaps 1,000 small vessels," Grim answered. "Nothing larger than a basic cruiser. Most are built for moving cargo, not fighting." Vex almost smiled. In his long career, he had destroyed entire fleets. He had watched civilizations burn. The Void Reaper alone carried more firepower than most planetary defense systems. And their ground forces? Scattered across their planet in small groups. They seemed to spend most of their time fighting each other over resources and territory. Grim's voice held contempt. "Our ground troops will crush them in days." The captain walked to the large window that looked out into space. Stars glittered like diamonds against the black void. Somewhere ahead lay Earth, another world to add to. "The Alliance's growing empire. Set course for the human system, standard approach." "Yes, sir," came the reply from multiple voices. The Void Reaper began to move. Its massive engines glowed blue-white as they pushed the ship forward. Around it, a fleet of smaller vessels fell into formation. Cruisers, destroyers, and troop transports, enough ships to conquer most star systems twice over. In the depths of the ship, thousands of Alliance soldiers prepared for battle. They cleaned their weapons and sharpened their claws. They had done this dance many times before. Drop from orbit, destroy any resistance, and claim another world for the Alliance. But as the fleet traveled through hyperspace toward Earth, none of them knew what they were really heading into. Back on Earth, deep underground in a hidden military base, alarms were ringing. General Stone sat in a chair that was too small for his large frame. His gray hair was cut short and his face was marked by years of command decisions. Around him, officers from different nations worked side by side at computer stations. "Confirmed?" "Sir," said Colonel Reed, looking up from her screen. "Deep space sensors picked up the signatures, at least 50 ships, maybe more. They're big." Stone rubbed his tired eyes. He had been preparing for this day for 5 years. Ever since the first alien probe had been detected at the edge of the solar system, most world leaders had ignored the warnings. They were too busy fighting their own wars to worry about threats from space. "How long until they reach us?" Stone asked. 18 hours, maybe 20, Reed replied. "They're moving fast." Stone looked around the command center. Representatives from 12 different nations sat at the stations. Just 2 days ago, some of these countries had been shooting at each other. Now they worked together because they had no choice. "Send the message to all defense stations. Operation Last Hope is now active." Around the world, military bases received the same message. In hidden bunkers, Old enemies shook hands and began sharing their most secret weapons. Scientists who had been working on separate projects suddenly found themselves on the same team. The planet that had been divided for so long was finally united by the threat of total destruction. On the moon, Admiral Kane stood in the control room of Luna Base. He was 60 years old, with white hair and hands that shook slightly from an old injury. He had fought in 3 different wars on Earth, but never anything like this. "Status report," he said to his aide, Major Cross. "All orbital platforms are online, sir. We have 43 ships ready for combat, another 20 that can fight if needed." Cross paused. "It's not enough, is it, sir?" Kane looked out the window at Earth hanging in space like a blue marble. His home. His family was down there somewhere. "No, Major, it's not nearly enough, but it's what we have." The old admiral had studied every battle in human history. He knew that sometimes the side with fewer numbers could still win, but only if they were smart, lucky, and willing to sacrifice everything. "Sir," Cross said quietly, "the alien fleet, our computers estimate they could destroy our entire planet." Kane nodded slowly. "Then we better make sure they don't get the chance." Meanwhile, the Void Reaper continued its journey through space. In the ship's war room, Captain Vex met with his senior officers. A holographic display showed the human solar system in blue light. "Simple plan," Vex said, pointing to Earth with one clawed finger. "We jump in here, at the edge of their system. Destroy any orbital defenses. Send the standard surrender message. When they refuse, and they always refuse, we demonstrate our power by destroying some of their cities." "What if they actually surrender?" asked Nora. Vex's laugh was cold and harsh. "They won't. In all my years of conquest, I've learned one thing about soft-world species. They always think they can fight back. They always believe some miracle will save them." "And when they realize there's no miracle?" Grim asked. "Then we take their world and add it to the Alliance," Vex replied. "Their people will serve us, or they will die. Simple." The meeting ended, and the officers returned to their stations. None of them were worried. They had done this hundreds of times before. Soft-world species were all the same, weak, divided, and easy to conquer. But as the Void Reaper dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system, Vex felt something he hadn't experienced in years. A small, nagging doubt in the back of his mind. The human scouts had said something strange. These humans fought each other constantly. Most species did that because they were weak and couldn't unite against outside threats. But what if it was different? What if all that fighting had made them stronger? Vex shook his head and dismissed the thought. Weakness was weakness. Soon, Earth would burn like all the others. He was about to learn just how wrong he could be. The Void Reaper and its fleet began moving toward the inner solar system. Behind them, space was empty and quiet. Ahead of them, humanity waited. Not the scattered fighting species the Alliance expected, but something far more dangerous. Something that had been forged in the fires of constant conflict and was ready to show the galaxy what real strength looked like. The war for Earth was about to begin. The Void Reaper emerged from the darkness between worlds like a metal beast awakening from sleep. Captain Vex stood on his bridge, watching as Earth's solar system spread out before them on the main screen. The third planet glowed blue and white, beautiful and peaceful. Pathetic, Vex muttered. Look how soft their world appears. No wonder they're weak. His crew nodded in agreement. Grim worked at his station, scanning the system. Sir, detecting multiple orbital stations around their planet. Also several ships moving between the inner worlds. Numbers, Vex asked. 12 orbital platforms, 47 ships of various sizes. Grim paused, studying his readings. Sir, something strange. The ships, they're moving into formation. Vex frowned. Most species scattered their forces when the Alliance arrived, hoping to hide or escape. Formation? Show me. The main screen changed to show the space around Earth. Vex watched as human ships moved with surprising coordination. Ships that had been scattered across the system were now gathering near their homeworld. Perhaps they're trying to surrender together, suggested Nora from her station. Or preparing to run, added Tor, his sharp teeth gleaming. But Vex wasn't so sure. Something felt different about these humans. Begin intimidation protocol. Destroy the closest orbital station. The Void Reaper's main cannon charged with a sound like thunder. A beam of pure energy lanced out across space, striking one of Earth's orbital platforms. The station exploded in a ball of fire and debris. Send the surrender message, Vex ordered. Across all human communication channels, the same message appeared. It was translated into every Earth language. Primitive species of Earth, you have been selected for conquest by the Deathworld Alliance. Surrender now and serve us, and some of you may live. Resist and your world will burn. You have 1 hour to respond. On Luna Base, Admiral Kane read the message with grim determination. Around him, officers from 12 different nations waited for his response. Just days ago, these same people had been enemies. Now they stood united. Send our reply, Kane said quietly. The response that went back to the Void Reaper was simple. Come and take it. Captain Vex stared at the message in disbelief. They refuse? These soft-worlders actually refuse? Should we destroy another station, sir? Grim asked. No, Vex said slowly. Something's not right here. Most species beg for mercy by now. These humans, they sound almost eager to fight. On Earth, General Stone coordinated the planet's defense from his underground command center. Screen showed the positions of every human ship and weapon. All units, this is Stone. The aliens have made their move. Time to show them what we're made of. Around the world, hidden weapons came online. Missile silos opened their doors. Defense satellites that had been disguised as communication relays revealed their true nature. And in space, the human fleet began to move. Admiral Kane commanded the Earth Defense Force from his flagship, an old battle cruiser called Defiance. It wasn't the newest ship, but it had been upgraded with every weapon humanity could build. Around him, ships from different nations formed into battle groups. All ships, this is Kane. The Admiral's voice crackled across the communication channels. Remember, we're not trying to win a fair fight. We're trying to survive. Use every trick you know. The human fleet was outnumbered 5-1. Their ships were smaller and less armored than the Alliance vessels. But they had one advantage the aliens didn't expect. They had been fighting each other for thousands of years. They knew every dirty trick in the book. Captain Mills commanded a group of converted cargo ships that had been turned into missile platforms. Remember, he told his crews, we're not warships, we're surprises. The first battle began near Mars. 3 Alliance cruisers moved to destroy a human mining station. They expected no resistance, just civilians to slaughter. Instead, they flew into a trap. The mining station launched every piece of equipment it had as improvised weapons. Drilling robots became missiles, ore containers became bombs, and from behind Mars's smaller moon, 6 human ships appeared. Captain Ross led the ambush. Her ship, Vengeance, was old and slow, but it carried enough missiles to level a city. Fire everything, she ordered. The human ships opened fire from point-blank range. Hundreds of missiles streaked toward the surprised Alliance cruisers. The aliens' shields flared and failed under the massive barrage. One Alliance cruiser exploded. Immediately, the second lost power and began spinning helplessly. The third tried to run, but Ross's ships pursued it like hunting dogs. Impossible, breathed the surviving alien captain as his ship died around him. How did primitives do this? On the Void Reaper, alarms were ringing. Vex watched in shock as his cruisers were destroyed. How? How did they coordinate such an attack? Sir, Grim reported, his voice tight with concern. The humans have been planning this. They knew exactly where our ships would be. Vex's red eyes narrowed. They've been watching us, studying us. He paused, thinking. Send in the destroyers. Crush their ambush ships before they can escape. But when the Alliance destroyers arrived at Mars, the human ships were gone. They had vanished like ghosts, leaving only debris and empty space. Admiral Kane smiled grimly as he watched the tactical display. The first blood had gone to humanity. Phase 1 complete. All ships fall back to the secondary positions. The Human fleet scattered again, but this time it wasn't retreat. It was preparation. Like wolves circling their prey, they moved to new positions around the solar system. Captain Vex realized he was facing something he had never encountered before, an enemy that didn't fight like civilized species. These humans fought like wild animals, cunning, unpredictable, and dangerous. "Sir," Tor reported from his weapons station. "3 more of our escort ships have gone silent. The humans are picking off isolated vessels." "Impossible," Vex snarled. "Their ships are weaker than ours." "Yes, sir, but they're not fighting fair. They hit and run. They use asteroids as cover. They attack from multiple directions at once." Vex studied the tactical display. Red dots showed his ship's positions. Blue dots showed estimated human positions. But the blue dots kept moving, appearing and disappearing like will-o'-the-wisps. "This is not how civilized species fight," Nora observed. "No," Vex agreed grimly. "This is how predators hunt." The battle continued for hours. The humans couldn't match the Alliance in straight combat, so they didn't try. Instead, they struck like lightning and vanished before the aliens could respond. Converted passenger liner called Hope rammed an Alliance destroyer, sacrificing itself to save 3 smaller human ships. The liner's captain, an old woman named Davis, broadcast her final message: "For Earth." A squad of human fighters, barely more than armed shuttles, swarmed an Alliance cruiser like angry insects. They were too small for the cruiser's big guns to hit effectively. One by one, they delivered their payloads of explosives and missiles until the mighty warship was a burning wreck. Each victory cost the humans dearly. For every Alliance ship they destroyed, they lost 2 or 3 of their own. But they kept fighting with a fury that shocked their enemies. "Why don't they surrender?" Hawk asked from his position at the sensor station. "They're losing ships faster than we are." Vex didn't have an answer. In all his years of conquest, he had never seen anything like this. Most species gave up when they realized they couldn't win. These humans seemed to fight harder the more desperate their situation became. "Sir," Grim reported, "we've lost 8 ships. The humans have lost 22. "Then we're winning," Vex said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Are we?" Grim asked quietly. "Sir, our remaining ships are all damaged, our crews are exhausted, and the humans, they're still coming." On his flagship, Admiral Kane studied the battle reports. They were losing ships faster than he had hoped, but slower than he had feared. More importantly, they were learning about the enemy. "The big ship," he said to Major Cross. "That's their command vessel. If we can damage it." "Sir, the Void Reaper is 10 times larger than our biggest ship. Its armor is too thick for our weapons." Kane smiled coldly. "Then we don't attack its armor. We attack its brain." The Admiral turned to his communications officer. "Signal all remaining ships, we're going to try something crazy." In space around Earth, the surviving human vessels began moving into a new formation. They weren't running, this time. They were preparing for one final desperate attack. Captain Vex watched the human ships gather and felt something he hadn't experienced in decades: uncertainty. These weren't the weak, divided primitives his scouts had described. These were warriors who fought like demons and never gave up. "Sir," Tor said quietly, "perhaps we should call for reinforcements." Vex's pride stung at the suggestion. The mighty Void Reaper had never needed help before. But as he watched the human ships form their battle line, he began to wonder if this time might be different. "No," he said finally. "We finish this ourselves. All ships prepare for final assault. We end this now." But even as he gave the order, Vex couldn't shake the feeling that he was making a terrible mistake. These humans had already surprised him, once. What other surprises might they have in store? The stage was set for the decisive battle. The wounded Alliance fleet prepared to crush the remaining human forces. But the humans weren't planning to meet them in honorable combat. They were planning something far more dangerous. Something that would show the galaxy that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology or their numbers. It was their absolute refusal to accept defeat. The red planet Mars had never seen a battle like this before. What started as humanity's last stand in deep space had become something far more desperate. Admiral Kane watched from the bridge of his damaged flagship as the Void Reaper and its remaining fleet approached the red planet's orbit. "All ships fall back to Mars' defense line," Kane ordered into his communicator. His voice was steady, but his hands shook slightly from exhaustion. They had been fighting for 18 hours straight. Around Mars, the surviving human fleet took position. Only 23 ships remained from the original 47. Each one bore the scars of battle, scorched hulls, missing weapon turrets, and makeshift repairs. But they still flew, and they still fought. "Sir," Major Cross reported, studying his tactical screen. "The alien fleet is down to 31 ships, but that big one, the Void Reaper, barely has a scratch on it." Kane nodded grimly. The massive Alliance command ship was like a fortress in space. Their weapons had damaged its escorts, but the flagship itself seemed unstoppable. "What's our status on the Mars? Defense platforms?" "All 6 platforms are operational, sir. Commander Blake has them ready to fire." On Mars Defense Platform Alpha, Commander Blake checked her weapons one final time. The orbital platforms had been built to protect Mars colonies from asteroid impacts. Now they would try to stop the most dangerous warship in the galaxy. "Remember," Blake told her crew, "we're not trying to destroy that monster. We're trying to hurt it enough to make it think twice." The platform's main gun was designed to shatter space rocks. Against the Void Reaper's armor, it would be like throwing stones at a tank. But sometimes enough stones could break even the strongest wall. Captain Vex stood on his bridge, studying the human defensive line. Something bothered him about their formation. "Why are they making their stand here?" he asked Grim. "This red planet has no strategic value." "Perhaps they're protecting their colonies, sir," Grim suggested. "No," Vex shook his head. "There are only a few thousand humans on Mars. Why sacrifice ships to save so few?" He paused, thinking. "Unless..." Before he could finish the thought, the human fleet attacked. But this wasn't like their previous hit-and-run tactics. This time they came straight at the Alliance fleet in a desperate charge. Admiral Kane led the attack personally, his battered flagship Defiance racing toward the enemy line. "All ships, attack pattern Alpha," Kane commanded. "Hit them hard and fast. Don't give them time to think." Captain Mills, commanding his converted cargo ships, launched every missile he had. "For everyone we've lost," he shouted as hundreds of warheads streaked toward the Alliance fleet. The space between Mars and its moons became a storm of fire and metal. Human ships, outgunned and outnumbered, threw themselves at the alien fleet with suicidal bravery. They rammed enemy vessels, exploded their own reactors as weapons, and fired until their guns melted. Captain Ross, her ship Vengeance already heavily damaged, aimed it directly at an Alliance cruiser. "This is for Earth," she said calmly, then rammed her ship into the enemy at full speed. Both vessels vanished in a ball of nuclear fire, but the real surprise came from Mars itself. Commander Torres, the human strategic genius who had planned the Mars defense, had spent months preparing for this moment. As the battle raged in orbit, she activated her master plan. "All mining stations begin seismic charges," Torres ordered from her command bunker deep under the Martian surface. Across Mars, mining explosives that had been secretly planted for months began detonating in sequence. But these weren't random explosions. Torres had calculated everything perfectly. The charges triggered massive landslides in Mars's Great Canyon system. Millions of tons of rock and debris launched into space from the planet's low gravity. What had once been mining equipment became the largest shotgun in the solar system. Captain Vex watched in horror as a cloud of debris larger than his ship rose from Mars's surface. "Impossible," he breathed. "They turned an entire planet into a weapon." The debris cloud struck the Alliance fleet like a giant fist. Smaller ships were crushed instantly. Even the mighty Void Reaper shuddered as rocks the size of buildings slammed into its hull. "Damage report," Vex shouted over the sound of alarms. "Hull breaches on decks 12 through 18, Hawk reported. "We've lost 2 weapon batteries. Shields are down to 60%. For the first time in its long career of conquest, the Void Reaper was actually hurt, but Torres wasn't finished. As the debris cloud cleared, she activated the second part of her plan. Mars' 6 defense platforms opened fire simultaneously, not at the ships but at the planet's smaller moon, Phobos. The concentrated fire cracked the small moon like an egg. Phobos, already held together weakly by its own gravity, began to break apart. But Torres had aimed the weapons carefully. The moon didn't just explode, it fell toward the Alliance fleet in a controlled avalanche. "They're insane," Nora whispered from her station on the Void Reaper. "They're dropping a moon on us." Vex had to admire the humans' creativity, even as he ordered evasive maneuvers. "All ships, emergency burn. Get us clear of the debris field." The Alliance fleet scattered as chunks of Phobos rained down around them. One piece, nearly a mile wide, struck an Alliance destroyer and turned it into scrap metal. Another piece damaged 2 more ships as they tried to dodge. But the Void Reaper, despite its damage, was still flying. And it was very, very angry. "Sir," Tor reported, "we've lost 8 more ships, the humans. They've lost everything except their flagship and 4 escorts." Vex looked at the tactical display. The human fleet was almost destroyed, but they had hurt the Alliance badly. Worse, they had shown that even the mighty Void Reaper could bleed. "The human commander," Vex said slowly. "Signal their flagship. I want to speak with him." On the bridge of the Defiance, Admiral Kane was covered in blood from a head wound, but his eyes were still sharp. When the alien communication came through, he straightened his uniform and faced the screen. Captain Vex appeared on the display, tall, gray-skinned, with glowing red eyes. "Human Commander, I am Captain Vex of the Deathworld Alliance. You fight well for a primitive species." "Admiral Kane, Earth Defense Force," Kane replied simply. "And we're just getting started." Vex studied the old human. Despite his wounds and his hopeless situation, there was no fear in Kane's eyes. Only determination. "Your fleet is destroyed. Your defense platforms are silent. Surrender now, and I will make your deaths quick." Kane smiled coldly. "You want to know something about humans, alien? We don't know how to quit. Every battle we lose just teaches us how to fight better." "Brave words from a dead man," Vex replied. "Maybe," Kane admitted. "But you're bleeding too, and we're not done yet." The communication ended, and Vex turned to his crew. The bridge of the Void Reaper showed signs of damage, sparking consoles, emergency lighting, and the smell of burned electronics. "Sir," Grimm said quietly, "perhaps we should call for reinforcements before we continue to their homeworld." Vex considered this. The logical thing would be to wait for backup, but logic wasn't driving him anymore. These humans had humiliated him, damaged his ship, and killed his crews. He wanted them to pay. "No," he said finally. "We finish this ourselves. Set course for Earth." On Mars, Commander Torres watched from her bunker as the alien fleet limped toward Earth. Her plan had worked better than she had hoped. The enemy was hurt and angry. Exactly what she wanted. "Ma'am," her aide said, "shouldn't we be celebrating? We hurt them badly." Torres shook her head. This was just the opening move. The real battle happens at Earth. She paused, looking at the tactical display. "But we taught them something important today." "What's that, ma'am?" "That humans don't fight fair, and we don't fight alone." As the damaged Alliance fleet moved toward Earth, they left behind the wreckage of nearly a dozen ships and the shattered remains of a moon. But more importantly, they carried with them a new understanding of their enemy. These humans were not the weak, divided species the Alliance had expected. They were something far more dangerous, a species that could unite in the face of extinction and turn anything, even planets and moons, into weapons. Admiral Kane's flagship, barely holding together, limped back toward Earth alongside his 4 remaining escorts. They had bought time and blood, but the final battle was still ahead. "Sir?" Major Cross asked as they watched Earth grow larger. On their screens, "Do you really think we can win?" Kane looked at his homeworld. Blue and beautiful and fragile. Somewhere down there, his granddaughter was probably sleeping in her bed, dreaming of birthday parties and toys. She would never know that her grandfather had fought a battle around Mars to keep her safe. Win, Kane said quietly. Cross. We're not trying to win anymore. We're trying to make them pay such a high price for Earth that they'll think twice before attacking another human world. You think there will be other human worlds, sir? Kane smiled for the first time in hours. Son, after today, I guarantee you there will be. Because now the galaxy knows something it didn't know before. What's that, sir? That humanity doesn't give up. Ever. Behind them, Mars slowly turned in its orbit, scarred but unbroken. The red planet had tasted battle and proven that even worlds could fight back. Ahead of them, Earth waited. And on Earth, the real surprises were just beginning. Earth had never looked more beautiful or more dangerous. As the damaged Void Reaper and its remaining fleet approached humanity's homeworld, Captain Vex expected to see a defenseless planet ready for conquest. Instead, he saw something that made his blood run cold. The entire planet bristled with weapons. Impossible, Vex muttered, studying the sensor readings. How did they build so much in such little time? Every major city on Earth's surface showed energy signatures of massive defense. Guns. Orbital platforms surrounded the planet like a ring of metal thorns. Even the moon had been turned into a fortress, its surface covered with missile launchers and beam weapons. Sir, Grim reported, his voice tight with concern. I'm reading over 300 defense platforms in orbit, ground-based weapons in every major population center. And sir, they've militarized their weather satellites. Weather satellites? They're not predicting storms anymore, sir. They're making them. On Earth's surface, the transformation had been incredible. In the weeks since the first alien probe was detected, humanity had done something it had never done before. They had truly united. Old enemies shared their most secret technologies. Scientists worked around the clock to turn civilian equipment into weapons of war. In New York, retired Marine Sergeant Gray stood on top of a skyscraper that had been converted into a fortress. At 55 years old, he should have been enjoying retirement. Instead, he was preparing to defend his home against alien invaders. Remember, Gray told the mixed group of soldiers, police officers, and armed civilians around him, these aliens think we're soft because we live on an easy world. Time to show them that Earth only looks peaceful. Below them, the city had become a maze of barricades, hidden weapon emplacements, and booby traps. Every building was a potential fortress. Every street was a killing ground. The aliens wanted to take Earth. They would have to fight for every inch. Dr. Sarah Park, a weather scientist turned military engineer, worked frantically in a control bunker beneath Washington, D.C. Around her, screens showed weather patterns across the globe. But these weren't natural patterns anymore. Hurricane Helen is holding steady over the Atlantic, reported her assistant, Lieutenant Webb. Wind speed steady at 200 miles per hour. Good, Park replied. What about the storm system over the Pacific? Typhoon Michael is ready to move on your command. The aliens won't expect us to weaponize weather itself. Park smiled grimly. Humans had been trying to control weather for centuries. They had finally succeeded, just in time to use it as a weapon against invaders from space. In orbit around Earth, Admiral Kane prepared for what everyone knew would be the final battle. His flagship Defiance was held together by spare parts and determination. Of his original fleet, only 12 ships remained operational. Sir, Major Cross reported, the alien fleet is moving into attack formation. The big ship is taking point. Kane nodded. Signal all defense platforms. When they get in range, hit them with everything we have. Don't save anything for later. There might not be a later. The Void Reaper led the Alliance attack. Despite its damage from the Mars battle, it was still the most powerful ship in the solar system. Captain Vex stood on his bridge, planning the conquest of Earth. Begin orbital bombardment, Vex ordered. Destroy their defense platforms first, then their major cities. The massive ship's weapons began to charge. But before they could fire, Earth struck first. Every defense platform in orbit opened fire simultaneously. Hundreds of energy beams and missile salvos converged on the Alliance fleet. The space around Earth lit up like a deadly fireworks show. The Void Reaper's shields flared as multiple hits struck its hull. Smaller Alliance ships exploded under the massive barrage. For a moment, it seemed like Earth's defenses might actually win. But the Void Reaper was built to withstand planetary bombardments. Its shields held and its weapons finally returned fire. The alien ship's main cannon spoke with the voice of thunder. One of Earth's largest orbital platforms vanished in a ball of plasma. Then another. The space battle became a slugging match between Earth's many smaller weapons and the Alliance's fewer but more powerful guns. "We're losing platforms faster than we can hurt them," Kane reported to General Stone on the planet below. "I'm going to try ramming the big ship." "Negative, Admiral," Stone replied firmly. "We need you for Phase 2. "Phase 2? They're coming down to the surface just like we planned. That's when the real fight begins." Captain Vex watched his tactical display as Earth's orbital defenses slowly crumbled. But the humans were making him pay dearly for every victory. He had lost 6 more ships, and the Void Reaper itself was now operating at only 70% efficiency. "Sir," Nora reported, "the planet's defenses are weakening. Recommend we begin ground assault." Vex nodded. "Launch all drop pods. I want troops on their surface within the hour." "Sir," Tor spoke up hesitantly, "perhaps we should bombard the planet from orbit first, soften their defenses." "No," Vex replied, coldly. "These humans have humiliated us long enough. I want to see their faces when we crush them personally." It was exactly what the humans had been hoping for. Thousands of Alliance drop pods began falling toward Earth's surface like deadly rain. Each one carried 20 alien warriors, the best soldiers the Deathworld Alliance had to offer. They expected to land and face scattered, terrified civilians. Instead, they fell into the most carefully prepared trap in human history. The first wave of pods landed in what appeared to be Central Park in New York City. The aliens burst out, weapons ready, expecting easy targets. Instead, they found themselves in a killing field. Every tree in the park was fake. They were actually camouflaged gun turrets. The grass concealed landmines. Even the park benches were rigged to explode. The aliens had walked into a meat grinder disguised as a peaceful garden. Sergeant Gray watched from his rooftop as the trap was sprung. "Welcome to Earth," he said quietly, then spoke into his radio. "All units, light them up." The fake park erupted in gunfire and explosions. Alien warriors trained on the harshest worlds in the galaxy found themselves pinned down by humans who had turned their own peaceful city into a weapon. But the aliens were tough and experienced. They fought back hard, using their superior weapons and armor to push forward. The battle for New York became a house-to-house, street-to-street war. Captain Vex led a personal assault force to the surface, landing his command shuttle in what his map said was Washington, D.C. He expected to capture the human government quickly and end their resistance. Instead, he found himself in a city that had become a fortress. Every government building was a bunker. Every street was a maze of obstacles and hidden weapons. And the weather was impossible. "Sir," Hawk reported, shouting over the sound of impossible wind. "The storm came from nowhere. Wind speeds are over 150 miles per hour and it's getting stronger." Dr. Park watched from her underground bunker as Hurricane Helen, guided by modified weather satellites, descended on Washington, D.C. The storm had been built specifically to ground alien aircraft and make their advanced sensors useless. "Let's see how well they fight in a Category 5 hurricane," Park said with satisfaction. Vex and his warriors struggled through the artificial storm. Rain fell like bullets. Lightning struck with impossible frequency. The wind was so strong it could knock down a full-grown alien warrior. But they pressed forward because they were from Deathworlds too. They had survived worse than this. What they hadn't expected was the humans fighting in the same conditions. "Contact, 2 o'clock, shouted Private Williams, a young soldier who had volunteered to defend his capital. Through the storm, he could see alien shapes moving toward the White House. The battle that followed was unlike anything in military history. Humans and aliens fought each other in the middle of a hurricane that should have made fighting impossible. Both sides used the storm as a weapon. Lightning rods became electric traps, wind became a way to blow grenades around corners. and rain made everyone equally blind. Sergeant Davis, a veteran of 3 Earth wars, found herself face to face with an alien warrior in the flooded subway tunnels beneath the city. Both their weapons were useless in the knee-deep water, so they fought with knives in bare hands. "You fight well for a soft-worlder," the alien gasped as they struggled. "This soft-worlder is about to kill you," Davis replied, and proved it. All across Earth, similar battles raged. In London, fog machines created artificial mist that hid human defenders. In Tokyo, the subway system had been turned into a maze of tunnels and traps. In Moscow, the humans used the winter cold as a weapon, turning water into ice to trap alien vehicles. But the most important battle was happening in a small town in Kansas, where Captain Vex had finally cornered what he thought was the human leadership. General Stone stood in what appeared to be an ordinary farmhouse, facing the alien captain through a shattered window. Around them, the battle for Earth raged. But for a moment it was just 2 old soldiers looking at each other. "Surrender," Vex demanded, his weapon pointed at Stone. "Your resistance is pointless. We have conquered 100 worlds." Stone smiled calmly. "Maybe you have. But you never conquered a world where the people had nowhere else to run." "What do you mean?" "Every other species you fought had colonies, other worlds they could retreat to. We don't. Earth is all we have. So we can't lose, because we have nowhere to go." Vex felt something he hadn't experienced in decades: doubt. "Your cities are burning. Your defenses are failing." "Are they?" Stone asked. "Look around, alien. How many of your soldiers are still fighting? How many of your ships are still flying?" For the first time since landing, Vex checked his communication system. The reports coming in were not what he expected. His ground forces were taking heavy casualties. His fleet in orbit was down to less than half strength. And the humans were still fighting everywhere. "Impossible," Vex muttered. "You should have broken by now." "That's your mistake," Stone said quietly. "You thought Earth was a soft world because it looks peaceful. But Earth isn't soft. Earth made us. And Earth taught us that sometimes the most dangerous predator is the one that looks harmless." Outside, the battle continued. Human civilians fought alongside soldiers. Grandmothers threw Molotov cocktails at alien tanks. Children guided resistance fighters through secret tunnels. Earth itself had become a living weapon, and every human on it was a warrior. Captain Vex realized with growing horror that his invasion was failing. Not because the humans were stronger, but because they simply refused to be conquered. Earth was proving to be the most dangerous death world of all, not because of its environment, but because of its people. And the worst part was, Vex was beginning to understand that the humans had more surprises waiting. The battle for Earth had been raging for 36 hours. Captain Vex stood in the ruins of what had once been Washington, D.C., his gray skin covered in cuts, and his red eyes filled with something he had never felt before: fear. Around him, his invasion force was being torn apart, not by superior weapons or numbers, but by an enemy that simply would not stop fighting. Every human who fell seemed to inspire 10 more to take their place. Every building they captured became a trap. Every victory cost more than it was worth. "Sir," Grimm's voice crackled through the damaged communicator, "we need immediate evacuation. Our ground forces are at 30% strength and falling." Vex looked around at the burning city. Somewhere in the smoke and chaos, human defenders were still fighting, still refusing to surrender. "Negative. We finish this." But even as he spoke the words, Vex knew they were losing. The mighty Deathworld Alliance, conquerors of 100 worlds, was being beaten by a species that had never left their own solar system. High above in orbit, the Void Reaper hung in space like a wounded beast. Its hull was scarred and burned. Half its weapons were destroyed. Captain Vex's pride and joy was dying around him. On the bridge, Nora studied the tactical display with growing alarm. "Sir, we've lost contact with 60% of our ground forces. The remaining ships are requesting permission to retreat." "Where is the human fleet?" Vex demanded through his communicator. Unknown, sir. They disappeared 12 hours ago. Our sensors can't locate them. Admiral Kane's remaining ships were indeed hiding, but not where the aliens expected. Using a network of asteroid mining tunnels throughout the solar system, the human fleet had gone to ground like wolves preparing for one final hunt. All ships, this is Kane. The old admiral's voice whispered across encrypted channels. Phase 3 is now active. Remember, we're not trying to survive this, we're trying to make sure they never come back. In the hidden tunnels of the asteroid belt, 12 human ships prepared for a mission they all knew was suicide. Each ship had been loaded with every explosive device humanity could build. They were no longer warships. They were flying bombs. But the real surprise wasn't in space. It was on Earth itself. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, Dr. Lisa Chen worked frantically at a control station that looked like something from a science fiction movie. Around her, the largest engineering project in human history was coming online. Tectonic. Resonators are in position, reported her assistant, Dr. Mike Foster. All fault lines are mapped and ready. Atmospheric processors show green across the board, added Dr. Anna Rodriguez from her station. We can trigger weather systems on a continental scale. Chen looked at the massive display showing Earth's internal structure. Red lines marked every major fault line and volcanic system on the planet. Blue lines showed ocean currents and atmospheric patterns. For months, teams of scientists had been secretly placing devices along these natural systems. Ma'am, Foster said quietly, you realize what this will do to our own planet? Chen nodded grimly. It'll hurt us badly, but it'll hurt them worse. She paused, thinking of her daughter sleeping in a shelter somewhere above. And it'll make sure no other alien fleet ever thinks Earth is an easy target. On the surface, General, Stone received the message he had been waiting for. All units, this is Stone. Operation Earthshaker is authorized. Repeat, Earthshaker is authorized. Captain Vex felt the ground shake beneath his feet. At first he thought it was just another human bomb. Then the shaking got stronger and stronger. Earthquake, shouted one of his warriors. But this wasn't a natural earthquake. This was something far worse. Dr. Chen's fingers moved across her controls like a pianist playing humanity's final symphony. Activate tectonic resonators. All California fault lines. Beneath the Earth's surface, carefully placed devices began vibrating at precisely calculated frequencies. The San Andreas Fault, dormant for decades, suddenly woke up with a roar that could be heard from space. The earthquake that followed wasn't natural. It was controlled, directed, and devastating. Alien landing zones across California cracked open, like eggs. Dropships fell into suddenly appearing chasms. The very ground became humanity's weapon. Impossible, Vex gasped as he watched his forces disappear into the Earth. They've weaponized their planet's geology. But Chen wasn't finished. Activate atmospheric processors. Category 6 hurricane, targeted at the alien fleet. What happened next had never been seen in Earth's history. The humans didn't just redirect existing weather, they created new weather. A hurricane that shouldn't have been possible formed directly over the alien fleet in orbit. The storm reached into space itself, creating electromagnetic pulses that fried alien electronics and wind patterns that made orbital combat impossible. Lightning struck from the planet's surface to ships in orbit. The Void Reaper found itself fighting not just human weapons but the planet itself. Sir, Hawk shouted over the impossible storm, our shields are failing. The planet is generating electromagnetic pulses that are overwhelming our systems. Through the chaos, Admiral Kane's voice cut across all frequencies. Attention alien fleet. This is Admiral Kane of Earth Defense. You wanted to see what a Deathworld looks like? Welcome to the deadliest world in the galaxy. The remaining human ships erupted from their hiding places like angry hornets, but they weren't trying to win a space battle anymore. They were missiles with crews aimed directly at the alien fleet. Captain Mills, commanding his converted cargo ship, spoke calmly into his communicator as he aimed his vessel at an alien cruiser. For Earth, for humanity, for everyone who ever called this world home. His ship struck the alien vessel at ramming speed. Both ships vanished in nuclear fire. One by one, the human ships threw themselves at the alien fleet. Each impact was a small sun blooming in space. Each sacrifice brought Earth one step closer to survival. On the surface, the ground war had become something from a nightmare. The Earth itself was fighting the invaders. Geysers of superheated steam erupted under alien positions. Landslides buried entire companies of warriors. Sinkholes opened and swallowed alien vehicles. Sergeant Gray, still fighting in the ruins of New York, watched in amazement as the Hudson River suddenly changed course, flooding alien positions while leaving human defenders on high ground. How the hell are they doing this, he wondered aloud. Because this is our world, replied Private Williams, reloading his weapon. And our world doesn't like uninvited guests. Captain Vex realized his invasion was not just failing, it was becoming a massacre. His forces were being destroyed by a combination of human desperation and planetary engineering that should have been impossible. All ships, all units, he commanded. Immediate withdrawal, full retreat. But the humans weren't done with them yet. As the Void Reaper tried to pull away from Earth, Admiral Kane's flagship Defiance appeared directly in its path. The old ship was held together by determination and spare parts, but it still carried one final surprise. Kane to Vex, the Admiral's voice came across the communication channel. You wanted to conquer Earth? Then stay and fight like a warrior. The Defiance opened fire with everything it had left. Its weapons were small compared to the Void Reaper's mighty guns, but they were aimed with the precision of a lifetime soldier who had nothing left to lose. Vex found himself in the strangest moment of his military career. He was actually impressed by his enemy. Human Admiral, you fight with honor. Surrender now and I will grant you a warrior's death. Kane's laugh was harsh but genuine. Alien, I've been dead since this started. I'm just taking as many of you with me as possible. The two ships dueled. In the storm-torn space above Earth, the Void Reaper was larger and more powerful, but the Defiance fought with the fury of a planet defending its children. When Kane's ship finally died, it died like a warrior. The Defiance rammed the Void Reaper's command section, its reactor exploding in a last act of defiance that left the alien flagship crippled and burning. Dr. Chen, watching from her control room deep underground, made the hardest decision of her life. All stations activate final protocol. Turn on the magnetosphere amplifiers. Ma'am, Foster protested, that could strip away our atmosphere. We could kill our own planet. Better dead than slaves, Chen replied quietly. Earth's magnetic field, artificially amplified beyond all natural limits, reached out into space like an invisible hand. It grabbed every piece of metal in orbit, alien ships, debris, even space, stations, and began pulling them toward the planet. The Void Reaper, its engines damaged and its hull compromised, couldn't escape. The planet's magnetic field dragged it inexorably toward the atmosphere. Captain Vex, standing on his burning bridge, watched Earth grow larger on his screens. His ship, his crew, his invasion. All of it was ending in fire and ruin. Sir, Grimm said quietly, perhaps we should abandon ship. Vex shook his head. No. A captain goes down with his ship. He paused, looking at his crew. Aliens from a dozen, different Deathworlds, all brought low by a species they had thought weak. Send a message to Alliance Command. What should it say, sir? Vex thought for a long moment. Tell them Earth is not to be conquered. Tell them the humans. The humans are the most dangerous species in the galaxy. And tell them... He paused, almost smiling. Tell them we found a worthy enemy at last. The Void Reaper burned up in Earth's atmosphere like a falling star. The most feared ship in the galaxy became a brief flash of light in humanity's sky. On the surface, General Stone watched the alien ship die from his command bunker. Around him, reports came in from around the world. The alien ground forces were surrendering or retreating. The orbital battle was over. Earth had survived. But at a cost. Major cities lay in ruins. Millions were dead or homeless. The planet itself had been wounded by the weapons used to defend it. Sir, his aide asked, was it worth it? Stone looked at the tactical display showing the fleeing alien ships. Word of Earth's defense would spread throughout the galaxy. Other species would know that humanity could not be easily conquered. "Ask me in 100 years," Stone said quietly. "When human ships are exploring the galaxy instead of alien fleets attacking Earth." 6 months later, the first human starship launched from Earth's orbital shipyards. It was called the Admiral Kane, and its mission was to carry word to the galaxy that humanity was no longer hiding on one world. Earth had proven that sometimes the most dangerous predator is the one that looks harmless. The galaxy was about to learn that lesson very well. The Deathworld Alliance had come to conquer Earth. Instead, they had awakened something far more dangerous, a species that would never again wait for enemies to come to them. Humanity was going to the stars.